The lights in the studio were softer than usual, filtered through layers of gauze that turned the harsh glare of production into something almost gentle. It was the kind of lighting designed to flatter, to hide exhaustion, to make time itself look kinder than it really was. Nancy Lee Grahn sat in the familiar chair, the one she had occupied for countless interviews over the years, her posture elegant but guarded, hands folded in her lap as if they were holding something fragile and unseen. Across from her, a producer adjusted a microphone. A publicist shuffled papers. The host smiled with practiced warmth. Everything was routine. Everything was safe. And yet, there was a question in the air that no one quite knew how to ask. "Before we begin," the host said carefully, "we just want to say how grateful we are that you're here. Diane Miller has been such a cornerstone of General Hospital for decades now. Fans love her, and they love you." Nancy returned the smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "That means a lot." They started with the usual topics. The longevity of the show. The evolution of Diane from a sharp-tongued, morally flexible attorney into a woman of depth, vulnerability, and fierce loyalty. The way Nancy brought humor and steel into every courtroom scene. The way she could deliver a line that made the audience laugh one moment and hold its breath the next. She spoke easily about those things. About the joy of working with her castmates. About the challenge of keeping a character fresh after so many years. About how daytime television had a unique power to grow with its audience, to reflect their lives back at them in unexpected ways. But then the conversation began to drift. It always did. The host glanced at a card, hesitated, then looked back up. "There's been a lot of buzz lately," she said gently. "A lot of speculation online. Fans are wondering about what's next for you. For Diane. For your journey on the show." Nancy's fingers tightened slightly, just enough to be noticeable if you were looking for it. She nodded, acknowledging the question without answering it. "I've seen the speculation," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, an awareness, a carefulness, like someone walking across thin ice. The host pressed on, but softly. "Some people are worried. Some are hopeful. And some are just curious. They want to know if there's something you'd like to share with them." There it was. The unspoken thing, hovering between them. Nancy took a breath. It wasn't a dramatic sigh, not the kind meant for effect. It was the kind of breath someone takes when they are steadying themselves, when they are choosing their words with care because they know those words will travel far beyond the room they are spoken in. "There are some things," she said slowly, "that are still in process. Some things that are very personal. And some things that involve a lot of people, not just me." She paused, eyes flicking briefly to the publicist, then back to the host. "I'm not ready to discuss that yet." The sentence was simple, polite, firm, and instantly, it became a headline. In the world of General Hospital, secrets are currency. They drive storylines, fuel cliffhanger, and keep fans tuning in day after day. Off-screen, the culture isn't all that different. Every pause, every carefully chosen word, every refusal to answer a question becomes a clue in a puzzle that viewers are desperate to solve. Nancy Lee Grahn isn't ready to discuss this. The phrase spread like wildfire across fan forums and social media. What was this? A storyline? A contract negotiation? A personal struggle? A farewell? Speculation bloomed in every direction. Some fans were convinced it meant a major Diane Miller arc was coming. Something dark, something emotional, something that would push the character into uncharted territory. Others feared the worst, that Nancy might be hinting at an impending exit from the show, that one of Port Charles' most beloved legal eagles might soon be delivering her final closing argument. And then there were those who sensed something deeper, something more human behind the carefully maintained professional composure. Because Nancy Lee Grahn had never been just another soap actress. Over the years, she had been outspoken, passionate, and unafraid to bring her real-world convictions into public view. She had shared her triumphs and her struggles, her joys and her anger, her humor and her heartbreak. Fans felt like they knew her, not just as Diane, but as Nancy, which made her silence all the more powerful. Back on the General Hospital set, the day unfolded as it always did. Scripts were rehearsed. Cameras rolled. Directors called out instructions. The fictional lives of Port Charles continued to twist and turn, oblivious to the real-life undercurrent of curiosity and concern rippling through the fandom. Nancy slipped into Diane Miller with the ease of someone putting on a familiar coat. In the courtroom set, she was sharp, confident, unstoppable. Her character sparred verbally with an opposing counsel, delivered a cutting remark, and then, in a quieter moment, revealed a flash of vulnerability that made the scene crackle with emotional truth. To anyone watching, everything looked normal. But between takes, when the cameras were off and the chatter of the crew filled the air, there was a different energy around her. Not dramatic. Not tense. Just introspective. A longtime castmate approached her, offering a cup of coffee. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She smiled. "Yeah, just thinking. About all the noise out there." She nodded. "It comes with the territory, I know. But sometimes people forget we're allowed to have things that are private, or unfinished, or just not ready to be shared." He leaned against a table, studying her with the familiarity that comes from years of working together. "Whatever it is, you don't owe anyone an explanation until you're ready." "I know," she said. "And I'm grateful for the fans. Truly. Their passion is what keeps this show alive. But passion can turn into pressure. And sometimes, you need a little space to figure out your own story before you tell it to the world." The irony, of course, was that she spent her days portraying a character who specialized in extracting the truth. Diane Miller was the woman who cornered witnesses, who demanded answers, who refused to let anyone dodge the hard questions. She was relentless, brilliant, and often ruthless in her pursuit of justice. Nancy, in contrast, was choosing restraint. In one particularly powerful scene that week, Diane stood in an empty courtroom late at night, reviewing files by herself. The case she was working on was complex, emotionally charged, and riddled with secrets. At one point, she set the papers down, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Not everything is ready to be said out loud." The line wasn't in the script. The director caught it, eyebrows lifting, but didn't call cut. The moment felt real. Too real to interrupt. Later, during playback, a few crew members exchanged glances. It was just a line, just a character beat. And yet, it resonated in a way that felt layered. Fans, meanwhile, were dissecting every new episode for clues. A lingering look. A subtle change in tone. A storyline that seemed to mirror the themes of uncertainty and unspoken truths. Was Diane about to face a health scare? A moral crisis? A romantic turning point? Or was the story behind Nancy's reluctance to speak something entirely separate from the fictional world of Port Charles? One popular theory suggested that she was considering a major career shift. After decades in daytime television, perhaps she was weighing new opportunities, stage work, film, activism, or even stepping behind the camera. Another theory pointed to personal challenges, the kind that don't fit neatly into a press release or an interview soundbite. What united all these theories was a sense of respect, at least among the more thoughtful fans. A recognition that isn't ready to discuss this didn't mean never. It meant not yet. And that difference mattered. In a quiet moment at home, away from the lights and the questions, Nancy reflected on the strange duality of her life. On the one hand, she was part of a cultural institution that thrived on openness, on emotional display, on inviting millions of people into the intimate corners of imaginary lives. On the other hand, she was a private individual navigating real experiences that didn't always have neat arcs or satisfying resolutions. She scrolled through messages from fans, words of love, of support, of concern. Some were heartfelt, others intrusive, but most were simply human, people reaching out because they cared. One message stood out. It read, "Whatever you're going through, take your time. We'll be here when you're ready." She smiled at that. Time. It was the one thing soap operas manipulated with ease and real life guarded jealously. In Port Charles, months could pass in a week, crises could erupt and resolve within a handful of episodes. In reality, understanding, healing, and decision-making followed no such schedule. She wasn't ready to discuss this yet because this was still becoming, still unfolding, still finding its shape. And she wanted the story, whatever it ultimately was, to be told with honesty, not haste. The next time she sat down for an interview, the question came again, as everyone knew it would. "There's still so much curiosity out there," the interviewer said. "People really want to know what you meant when you said you weren't ready to discuss, well, you know." Nancy met her gaze, calm and steady. "I do know. And I understand why people are curious. It's part of the relationship between performers and their audience. But sometimes, the most honest thing you can say is that you need more time." She paused, then added, "That doesn't mean there's nothing to say. It just means the story isn't finished yet." The interviewer nodded, respecting the boundary. "When it is finished, when you are ready, do you think you'll share it?" A soft smile touched Nancy's lips. "Probably. I've never been very good at staying silent forever. But I want to make sure that when I do talk about it, I'm doing so from a place of clarity and strength, not pressure." In the weeks that followed, the headlines slowly shifted. New plot twists on General Hospital grabbed attention. Other actors gave interviews. Other rumors rose and fell. But the phrase lingered in the collective memory of the fandom like an unresolved chord. Nancy Lee Grahn isn't ready to discuss this. It became less of a provocation and more of a promise. A promise that there was a story still to come. A promise that when the time was right, it would be told on Nancy's terms. And a reminder that behind every iconic character, behind every dramatic monologue and courtroom showdown, there was a real person with a real life that didn't always fit into the rhythms of a daily soap. For now, Diane Miller would continue to fight her battles in Port Charles. She would argue cases, protect her clients, and deliver the kind of performances that had made her a fan favorite for years. And Nancy Lee Grahn would continue to live her life, navigating whatever this was with the same intelligence, passion, and resilience that she brought to every role she played. When she was ready to discuss it, the world would listen. Until then, her silence wasn't empty. It was simply waiting.